Hey, what's up, everybody? 10 burning questions from Scream 1996. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Nick Push. Well, I tackled the entire Halloween franchise with my 10 burning question series, and now it's time to move on to another franchise. I asked for your guys' feedback in my last video and got a lot of various yet great options here. You know, from Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, obviously, which we've chosen to do today. And then a lot of one-offs as well. So I decided I'm going to kind of tackle some of these franchises at the same time. So I'm going to go Scream, might go Friday the 13th next, but we're going to continue doing Scream and continue doing some of these other franchises at the same time. That being said, what this is just what it sounds like. 10 burning questions I have for these movies. So as I'm watching Scream 1996, these are 10 questions that I have while watching this movie. Some of these questions could be plot related, some of these questions could be some behind the scenes related, some could be like what ifs, and some are questions for you guys in the audience. And do me a favor, if you have answers to these questions, please let me know in the comments. I always enjoy your feedback, always enjoy hearing what you guys have to say, and a lot of times you guys know a lot more than me, so I find it informative as well as fun. That being said, guys, let's dive right into it with question number 1, and that is a doozy, and that is who killed Tatum? A lot of people have theories on this, and it seems pretty obvious, right? I think most people think it's probably Billy. Well, I'm here to tell you, yeah, it's Billy. It's probably Billy. But, you know, you could make an argument for Stu, right? You know, she goes and gets some beer, and then Stu maybe slinks off into the garage a couple minutes later after she, or not even a couple minutes, a few seconds later after she, you know, shuts the garage door behind her, and then boom, he's standing there at the garage door shaking his head. Where it comes in that, you know, it was obviously Billy is Billy hadn't gotten to the party yet, right? He shows up a little later, and also Ghostface being pretty fucking aggressive with her. But maybe Stu had some beef with Tatum that he wanted to, you know, let out, you know, with his knife. You know, but Tatum's death is a great death in this movie. It's a great scene. You know, she's in the garage. There's people everywhere, but she's helpless. She is stranded in that garage, you know, and obviously we get the iconic death of her trying to squeeze her boobs through the, you know, animal door in the garage, and the garage door going up, a little unrealistic. But either way, the whole scene is great. It's where we get the iconic phrase of Ghostface from that scene with Tatum. So I think it's probably pretty obvious that it's Billy, but I think there could be a little argument for Stu, and I just want to see if I'm in the majority where I think it's Billy. Maybe you guys are convinced it's Stu, and maybe I'm just way off on this, so tell me in the comments. Question 2. Is Dewey a convincing red herring? Remember, we're just talking about Scream 1996, and they kind of had a lot of different red herrings here. You know, they had the principal, they had, you know, the cop with the boots, Randy, Billy, Stu. Obviously, you know, Billy was a huge one, right? But they have Dewey kind of be a red herring. You know, he this, you know, goofy, slow, weird cop, right? You know, he's kind of falling for Gale, and, you know, we get the iconic scene from the trailer. If you remember, you know, the marketing of this movie like I do. I was really young, but I remember it, you know, of Dewey taking the flashlight. You're not scared, are you? And, you know, it's just kind of like a little bit of a red herring. For me, it didn't really work as a red herring, but I think it could have worked if they did it a lot better, and they spent a little more time on, you know, maybe some sinister stuff that Dewey is up to, or, you know, make it kind of look like he could be involved in some shit, you know. So I don't think it completely worked. I don't think it didn't work. Like, I think it was fine, but I think they could have done it a lot better, where we had a lot more questions about Dewey as a character before, you know, we fell in love with him throughout this franchise. Question number 3. Who is more important to the success of Scream, Wes Craven or Kevin Williamson? It's a tough one, right? Both deserve a shit ton of credit. Wes Craven, rest in peace, is one of the best horror directors of all time, from Nightmare on Elm Street to the Scream movies to, you know, People Under the Stairs, Serpent in the Rainbow, all kinds of shit, right? But I think it's Kevin Williamson. And here's why. We've seen Wes, you know, we've seen Wes's talent before, you know, all kinds of things, but we never saw, you know, a movie like Scream before, where it was very well written. The characters knew about horror movies. They were talking about horror movies. You know, they created these rules for horror movies. You know, he has a very distinct writing style as far as dialogue and what the characters are self-aware of. So I think Kevin Williamson deserves more credit for the success of Scream. However, it's apples and apples, right? Or apples and oranges? No, it's apples and apples, right? They both deserve a ton of credit. You can make an argument that there's no Scream without Wes. You can make an argument that there's no Scream without Kevin. But combining them both is what makes it and made it the juggernaut that it is. But if I had to choose, I'd give Kevin Williamson a little more credit for the success, just because he created this snappy dialogue and characters that are self-aware and meta type shit. Question 4: who is your favorite character from this movie? A lot of amazing characters. Remember, we're only talking about this movie, the original. We're gonna get into Scream 2, etc. after this. But who's your favorite character from this movie? Maybe it's Sydney. The ultimate final girl, eventually becoming the best final girl of all time, in my opinion. Gail is amazing in this movie. I think this is Gail. Either Scream 1 or Scream 2 are Gail's best performances, or best character study of Gail are in the first 2 movies. And Courtney Cox is great in them. Maybe it is Dewey. For me, or maybe you're a Billy and Stu person, right? It's probably Stu for most people, right? For me, it's Tatum. I think Rose McGowan is great as Tatum, and I think Tatum is one of the more underrated horror characters in modern horror. And I think she might be like the best friend in a horror movie. A lot of great horror movies have a lot of great best friends. Their final person, final girl, whatever, has a best friend that's going along on this journey with them, right? I think Tatum is the best one of that. She's a great friend to Sydney throughout the movie, and unfortunately she gets her demise, which we talked about earlier. So for me, it's Tatum, but it's hard to argue with this. There's so many fucking good characters. Fucking Randy, right? Shit. Randy was us. He was a character that knew about horror movies, So for me, it's Tatum, but I won't argue with anyone that says anything else. Question 5. What is your favorite line from this movie? So many iconic lines from this movie. What's your favorite scary movie? Obviously, is the first thing that comes to mind, right? A lot of Stu's line at the end. They're gonna be so mad at me and shit like that. Mine is a Stu line at the end. That's the funniest line in the movie. I think nobody ever talks about it. But it's when Gail comes back. Here's your story. The reporter comes back, saves the day or something. And Billy's like, I thought you killed her or something. And Stu's like, she looked dead. Still does. The way he says that, and you see that goes to Gail, and she's all dirty and shit from the car accident or whatever. It's hilarious. It's Stu being subtle, which I love. Stu being subtle. And Matthew Lillard is over the top at the end, and everyone loves that, and I'm fine with that too. But I love the subtle humor of that line. Before we get into question 6, if you like talking Scream, we got a new movie coming out in about a year and a half or so. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, or at least consider it. I'd appreciate it, and it helps out the channel. Moving right along to question number 6. Is this the best opening in a horror movie ever? So many horror movies are known for having great openings, whether it's Halloween, whether it's Jaws, whether it's Nightmare on Elm Street, whatever. So many modern ones too. But then you got the Drew Barrymore, Casey Becker scene in this, and I think for me it's a slam dunk. This is easily the best opening in a horror movie ever, and something that probably can never be replicated. Right now we're ready for shit like this. We're ready for the main person, the main actress who's on a poster. If she's in the opening scene, she's gonna die, right? Obviously, anyone in an opening screen of a Scream movie is gonna die, unless you're, Jenna Ortega. But I think it's the best opening in a horror movie, and it's what goes 12, 15 minutes, whatever. But it's just the build up of everything, and not expecting it the first time we saw it. And I wish you could go back and relive that feeling for the first time in a movie like this, because it's terrifying. It's fucking brutal. The popcorn, the failing of the quiz, just the whole atmosphere of kind of like the mist in the background when Steve gets his gut slit, and then just the brutalness of her being stabbed, her parents on the phone, and ending with her hanging from the fucking tree with her guts hanging out. Brutal stuff. Best opening in horror for me, bar none. Question 7. What's, in your opinion, the most underrated kill in this movie? Like I said, a lot of good kills to choose from. Maybe it's the principal. Maybe it's Tatum, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of good kills. Casey Becker is the best kill in the movie, right? But what's the most underrated? For me, Kenny the cameraman. I fucking love that kill because I love the camera and I love the delay. It's like a 15-second delay. Is it 15? Maybe it's 45. I can't remember. 20, something like that. Either way, he sees Ghostface leaving the house on the camera, opens up the van, sees the door wide open to the house, and then you're like, oh shit, that's right, it's on a delay, and then boom, throat cut. Fucking glorious. Nobody talks about that kill. I think the whole setup with the whole scene and the delay, him opening the door and then seeing the door to the house open is fucking incredible. Question number 8. Does Roger Jackson, and specifically obviously his voice, is he the one that makes this movie iconic? I don't know if it's him alone, but he is a huge part of this franchise, a huge part of this movie, and a huge part of the reason why this movie is memorable. I don't think if there's no Roger Jackson in this, I don't think it becomes the juggernaut that it does. It's probably very successful still, because like I said, we've never seen anything like this before. You get the Casey Becker kill, you get the reveal of the double Ghostfaces at the end, but none of it comes to fruition, none of it hooks you without Roger Jackson's voice. I think he's an extremely integral part of this movie and this franchise as a whole, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for the way that this movie became iconic and just kind of wove its way into the zeitgeist of pop culture. Question number 9. Here's an interesting one for you guys. I was just thinking about this when I was watching Scream last time. Should we get a prequel to this movie? Everyone's talking about sequel this, retcon this, Scream in the real world. What about a prequel? You know, Billy and Stu killing Maureen and setting up who I think is the best character in this franchise, Cotton Weary. And you know, you could get a little bit more backstory on Maureen Prescott, even though arguably we had enough of that in Scream 3. And speaking of Scream 3, you know, Roman could be involved as well. You know, you get the early portion of Billy trying to convince Stu, Billy seeing his dad sleeping with that slut Maureen Prescott. His words, not mine, paraphrased obviously. But you just see kind of the origins of Ghostface. Should we get that? Would that be intriguing to you? I don't know if it would exactly work because it would lose kind of the screamness of it. Would he still be wearing a Ghostface mask? Would they still be making calls? Who's your favorite dad that you've slept with? I don't know. But I think there could be a story there. And then you get the Cotton stuff in there too. You know, she's sleeping with Cotton. He's an easy fall guy, right? You know, all that stuff. Could be interesting. Might not be a great story, but you might be able to work something with that. And finally, question 10. Did Stu die at the end of this movie? I have an answer for you guys. Yes, he did. Maybe. No, Stu is dead. Stu is dead. Until he comes back, right? You know, anyone's dead. But if we're talking about just Scream 1996, the fact that I didn't even want to consider this as a question because it was never been a question in my mind until the internet and YouTube started going crazy a few years ago with it. But I think now, because of all that, it is a legitimate question. It's been broken down to death, blah, blah, blah. I think Stu is dead. I think he should stay dead. But you never know. And they've planted seeds where they could bring him back. You know, especially bringing Nev back. You know, all kinds of shit, right? But I want to know, in your opinion, just taking Scream 1996 as a whole, even if you're a Stu believer, if you're on the Stu train, if you're whatever people, even people that have channels that are friends of mine, cough, cough, Pamela, even if you think Stu is coming back, if you think he's alive, at the end of Scream 1996, is Stu dead? Just taking this movie as a whole. Answer that question for me. But those are my 10 burning questions for Scream 1996. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you on the next one.